Could legendary Godzilla survive the Millennium era? With the Monsterverse definitely getting more films because of New Empire's absurdly undeserved success, it's pretty apparent that the creators are wanting Godzilla to get even stronger. They've been failing so far to get their wish, with both GVK and New Empire having a lot of hype statements that kind of fall flat in context. What if instead of just abusing Legendary by having Heisei beat the hell out of him again, how about instead we place him into an era where he actually has much more of a chance? Final Wars will be excluded from this analysis because, well, I've already covered him a few times, including fights against Legendary just one-on-one. So we're going to be covering 2000, Megaguirus, GMK, and the Kiryu films, and anything connected to them. This also means that I can talk about early Showa stuff, which I haven't gotten to do in quite a while. Fun. So now that we've cemented Godzilla at least large planet level to dwarf star level in base, obviously higher with his amps, and at least relativistic to the speed of light, how does he fare against Godzilla's past? We'll start with Godzilla 2000. 2000 is pretty simple to scale. He's stated to be stronger than the original Godzilla, who was able to boil enough of the ocean to generate country levels of attack potency. But, going off the fact that classic Godzilla's beam is 100 million degrees, this would actually bump the feat all the way up into multi-continental, and very high into it in fact, nearly worth an exaton of power. This may be supported by the fact the original Godzilla withstood the oxygen destroyer for a prolonged period of time, which generates exatons worth of energy, stayed to release in literal instants. Like a snap of the fingers, this would mean that the prolonged exposure would warrant even higher levels of power. In fact, all the way up to small planet level, and 2000 would probably be able to survive it better because of his increased regeneration ability. It is stated too that 2000 generates more radioactive energy than anything in nature, which you could liken to Monsterverse Godzilla's statement as well. If so, this would be at least comparable to a mini gamma ray burst, but since 2000 is a bit smaller, this yields lower levels of energy. At least multi-continental. To planet level though seems fine. Of course, if you take both at face value, both would be solar system level and about the same strength. In terms of speed, of course the radioactive beam is referred to as light, and radiation multiple times, which moves at or near the speed of light. However, in terms of combat, it's more questionable whether or not he actually scales to this level, or if it's just for his attacks. The UFO and Orga seem to struggle to react to these attacks, and Godzilla is able to outspeed them. But we do know that 2000 can hit the UFO, which flies at relativistic speeds. This would also be a casual multi-continental kinetic energy feat done with just the tip of his tail. However, as we can see, if we use legendary Godzilla's higher end stuff, he does definitely outscale 2000. Since more people are more comfortable with the multi-continental scaling for the Monsterverse though, this would already still be a pretty good fight. Especially since 2000 is damn near immortal. Legendary's best chance would be to subdue 2000 and use a big beam like he did to blast to the hollow earth, or his nuclear pulse to try to finish him off. Since versus Megaguirus is the strongest of the Millennium Godzillas, we're gonna save him for the end. So now we move on to GMK. GMK is stated to be the original Godzilla, so he should scale to his original self. In fact, some stuff says he's even more powerful. Being at least country to multi-continental, this gives GMK an okay shot against lower ends of Monsterverse Godzilla's scaling. However, since he can now, GMK gives us a new interesting ability. Spirits in this verse can be moved through electricity, and can compose and form entire monsters. Seemingly, at the end of the battle, when Godzilla destroys himself, the spirits are not to be seen, meaning he may actually be able to destroy spirits. The Monsterverse has stated it can absorb life force, with both Mechagodzilla and Godzilla doing so, though nothing quite as explicit as attacking the very soul itself. As for speed, GMK Godzilla can attack monsters like Mothra and Ghidorah, who can block his atomic breath. which is of course still stated to be incandescent light. How does he fare? Well, Unlike 2000, he doesn't quite have as good of statements. So, in terms of the raw power and speed department, while he may be able to compete in speed, he's going to be absurdly overpowered. Though, spiritual attack may be interesting. This may deal damage to Monsterverse Godzilla that bypasses his durability. Should be noted, Monsterverse Godzilla can also bypass durability with his quantum scale attacks, but GMK may be not the same. While he can regenerate, GMK's is much slower than 2000's, and can take a while to heal even minor wounds. Though, he can adapt mid-fight. He went from being harmed by Ghidorah's gravity beams to absorbing them, and using their power for his own. Still, it seems like the power gap is too much. Legendary marches on. The Kiryu saga is a very interesting story. While previously, the Absolute Zero canon was thought to be the only relevant feat in the verse, being Absolute Zero and destroying matter on the atomic scale, this feat usually resulted in calculations of large country to multi-continental. But there is more to explore here. Kiryu saga takes place within an altered Showa timeline. Now, I'm not going to say Kiryu saga scales to the entirety of the Showa power scaling, but there are notable things. For example, the original Mothra movie happened the exact same, because this same Mothra, when weakened, was able to fight Showa Godzilla, with the results of their battle stated able to destroy the entire planet, and being compared to an entire hydrogen bomb war. This is interesting because a hydrogen bomb war in this reference would be compared to the Mysterian hydrogen bomb war that also destroyed their entire planet. Because of how badly the Mysterians blew up their planet, this calculates all the way up to dwarf star level. This Mothra then faced off against King Ghidorah in 1999. It may not be the same King Ghidorah that we know of as the bully of the Showa era. Mothra still had to sacrifice herself to defeat him. That would imply Ghidorah is still a very powerful monster that she couldn't just beat with brute force. Mothra then resurrects in a state to have evolved even further. This is the Mothra that Godzilla pretty easily handles by himself. It's also stated that Godzilla is the strongest monster that has ever been, which would mean he of course upscales these previous monsters with ease. Also noteworthy is the fact that in this timeline, the original Godzilla's bones actually survived the Oxygen Destroyer, which, as we mentioned, can range from multi-continental to small planet plus. This is interesting because Kiryu's frame is the Godzilla skeleton, and modern Godzilla can actually blast through its bones. So Kiryu Saga Godzilla is actually at least planet level, all the way up to dwarf star level. The Kiryu Saga actually very explicitly refers to the beam of radiation as being not a heat ray, and in fact just pure radiation, which can also be back attributed to Showa and Heisei Godzilla respectively. This means that they are absolutely confirming that the beam moves at or near the speed of light. Kiryu was able to duck under the beam with ease. While he, yes, can blitz Godzilla, Godzilla is still quick enough to actually catch him off guard more than once, and fight him in melee combat. Now we have an interesting fight. The two of them seem pretty evenly matched. You can very much argue that Monsterverse Godzilla is stronger. This is because he's not just limited to only his base form. Chances are he can power up by absorbing Kiryu Godzilla's radiation, which would allow him to transform into his nuke-amped or evolved forms. The fact Kiryu Saga scales to at least dwarf star level should mean that in his base he would have a good edge over Legendary. Legendary is also not unknown to be harmed by things weaker than himself, so a barrage of beams from Kiryu Goji might actually do quite a bit of damage. Kiryu's Absolute Zero is also definitely more effective than Shimo's Absolute Zero, which only seems to freeze stuff, whereas Kiryu's destroy stuff. And while yes, it did pressure Godzilla pretty hard, he did still survive and mostly regenerate from the damage, only having a scar a year later. Despite that though, he actually got even stronger and fought a stronger Kiryu. In fact, if you want to highball this part of the era, all King Ghidorah has actually come from an exploding planet or star in their meteor form. The same meteor form that they can blow up and reform at will. And we know that King Ghidorahs are stated to be among the stronger of their race. On top of this, if you take the star translation for their mere birth, then of course they'd be at least star level. and Godzilla would scale to that, though this higher end scaling is a bit more inconsistent. But I'd say it's still more consistent than Solar Legendary. Unfortunately, I think it's quite ready to scale Kiryu Goji to the entirety of the Showa era, even though he scales above a King Ghidorah. So, for sake of a hard fight, Legendary will pass, due to higher intelligence, better hacks, and the fact he can power up into stronger forms. But it will be a hard fight. Now for one of the more powerful film Godzillas that nobody seems to give enough credit. The Godzilla from versus Megaguirus. This Godzilla is pretty infamous for actually withstanding the Dimension Tide's black hole more than once. The black hole is stated to be originally 2 meters, but in the final scene, when Godzilla blasted it, he actually forcefully expanded it to over 100 meters in radius, or over 200 meters wide in total. He then, of course, survives this thing collapsing onto his face. This is very powerful. Even just the 2-meter black hole forming would yield already large planet level, and its kinetic energy would yield up to dwarf star. However, the large black hole that he survived calculates well into solar system level. This means that even if you highball Legendary Godzilla to solar in his base, he would still be at a disadvantage. On top of this Godzilla is able to use his intelligence to face off against Megaguirus, a monster so quick she can blitz his atomic breath. In fact, she's so quick that even to the atomic breath, which is a beam of light, she blitzes it so quick that even at that speed you can't see her, which would make her multiple times the speed of light. This is more impressive than Mechagodzilla, Scar King, or anyone in the Monsterverse. And while yes, Godzilla is a good bit slower than Megaguirus, he could combat her through learning her tricks. On top of this great intelligence and strength, he's stated to actually be an evolution of Godzilla 2000, meaning he may in fact have all the same abilities. Since he was able to beam clash a black hole, this means that his atomic breath would function on an equally, if not even more, fundamental scale than Legendary's does. And we do see that when he is stabbed, he can regenerate too. Well, it seems there's absolutely nothing Legendary can do. He's fighting an enemy much stronger than himself. His only way to win would be possibly to highball his burning form, or, you know, if you're one of those stupid people, the amped pink form, I guess, and try to say that he can overtax him before he regenerates and adapts. But in that sense, that's pretty unlikely compared to Megaguirus Godzilla just actually winning this fight. For my thoughts on versus Final Wars, go check out the video I'm doing on him versus Legendary. See you all in the next one.